All right, so there's some other musical aspects of Pokemon Forever we should probably talk about. The first one we should probably mention is that this is the first movie where, for both the short, which was not shown in theaters in the U.S., this was a limited release, so that made things a little bit different, but the short and the main movie used the score from the Japanese version, which was not true of the previous movies. The previous movies, the third movie uses at least some score elements from the Japanese version, but the main movies for each of the three previous movies have an original score. How do you think that sort of affects the mood of the movie or how you perceive it? Any comments there?
I think for this movie in specific, it was an excellent choice. Because so much of that movie visually is a Japanese mystical forest. Like, I think to have tried to compose something else would have been not a mistake. I mean, you do what you have to do. I'm sure they would have come up with something beautiful as well. But I just think that the evoking that we get with the visual images, it is ideal to match it with the music. And so the fact that they could use a lot of the subscore was, I think, a great choice. If that's what it was, maybe it was a necessity.
As far as I know, it was a monetary decision because this was limited release and the technology at the time, they really couldn't afford to do a full rescore for the dub. Now, that would be the paradigm they would use for movie 4 through the end of Generation 5. With the X and Y movies, they actually did start going back to having an original score written. It is, as far as I know, all synth, because that's kind of the budgetary limitations there. But starting with the Diancie movie, they did start replacing the score again. And I can see pluses or minuses for each. To be fairly honest, especially with the last couple movies, I don't think I've been as moved listening to the Japanese scores just by themselves. Because what will happen, just to give a little insight into my musical experience with it, is I will buy the Japanese score, I'll get that in, I'll have not seen the movie at all, and the score, I think for the last couple movies, has not moved me as much as some of the earlier ones. Maybe there's less of a theme in the score elements, but that's just kind of the way I sort of feel about it. So I don't think I personally, and especially going through the first three movies that had original dub scores, I'm not as bothered by that. But I do like the score to this movie. It's maybe not as memorable as some of the earlier dub ones, or certainly the fifth movie has a really great score, which we'll talk about in our next episode probably. But actually, there are two score elements that I really always remember. One of them is from the start of the main movie. It's called, I believe, The Legend of the Forest. And I have a really strange reason for this coming to mind. Because whenever it comes up on like my iPod or whatever, I would get confused by it. Because the way those sort of like woodwind type instruments sound, it reminds me of the score to the 1989 movie The Wizard, which has a sort of a synth score kind of like that. So, and that kind of confuses me and makes it stick in my mind. It's not a bad track. It's actually pretty decent. But that's one of the ones that sticks with me. The other one that sticks with me is, of course, at the climax of the movie, we have the chapter title on the DVD is called Wrapped Up in Light, is sort of the name. But it's the scene where, I guess another spoiler alert, I believe, I don't know if they totally explain it, but the future and past versions of Celebi come back to sort of heal the Celebi in the present and revive it. So, but that has the sort of the Celebi's theme that we hear again elsewhere, most notably in the Zoroark movie, where Celebi comes back and is a major figure in that movie. What do you think about that particular movement there?
It's really interesting. Like, I love it musically. The human voices kind of threw me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. As I've watched the movie more and more, I've liked it more. But it did feel a little jarring that, we were having all these Pokemon and it's a Pokemon's specific theme. And then suddenly there was like this la 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 human sound coming out of it. So that was a little weird. But like, I do love the sound of it and the grandeur after so much of that score is kind of understated and soft and mysterious.
No, it definitely gives a dynamic there. And I'd say from the perspective of someone who's watched the dubs, I'd say that's certainly up there. Not quite, I'd say, with Tears of Life or the Guardian song or stuff like that. But it's pretty darn good, and I'm glad they brought it back, like I said, in the Zoroark movie in Generation 4.
What did you think of the Raging Lawnmower tracks?
Yeah, so the short is the Pikachus Peekaboo, in case you weren't sure exactly which short aligned with this movie. One of the main parts of that is that there is this lawnmower, well before Mo Rotom, that has a mind of its own. And it has these very, as you might expect, very chaotic tracks associated with it. There's like the lawnmower or Attack of the Lawnmower, and then the Lawnmower Returns is sort of these two tracks on the score. You know, sort of befits this piece of machinery run amok.
Yes, they're my favorites.
Overall, I'd say the score to this film is pretty good. It doesn't, in my mind, as someone who started off with the dub of the first three movies, doesn't quite stand out as much as certainly the second movie and to a large extent the first movie. But I still definitely think this was a relatively good score. And seeing as how we're talking about the short, we might as well talk about the Japanese and English sides have different songs there too, of course. In Japan, there's a couple little pop pieces, and then on the English side, we also have this song. It's performed by another somewhat regular from the early seasons, since J.P. Hartman performs Pikachus Coming, which J.P. Hartman, if I remember correctly, did Together Forever on the To Be a Master album. Let's start off on the English side for once here. What do you think of Pikachus Coming?
It was a really fun song. It's not my specific, jam, but it got me into the feel of it, and it's a cute little song.
Yeah, definitely. And then the guitar version in the end credits is pretty good as well. So, Anne, why don't you fill us in? What did we have on the Japanese side if you saw the Japanese version of that short?
Okay, we have two songs from there. We have the Big Midsummer Plan, Mansatsu no Daisakusen, which kind of, it plays under the credits after the little short finishes. And then in the actual segment itself is Hide and Seek, Kakurenbo, which is the song that plays while Pikachu is actually counting and looking for everybody. Both these songs have lyrics. Both are written by Erika Kawamura. Let's see, Hide and Seek is actually performed by Whiteberry, who did the remix of the Mezase Pokemon Master for movie 4.
Well, actually, it would be the 4th season of the TV show, because I think for the movie they have Rika It's kind of a weird scenario. Rika does the actual theme for the movie, but the TV show, which uses an alternative artist for that season, which kind of parallels what happened with the American side as well. Born to be a Winner, but does borrow some elements from the original Pokemon theme. But going back to the short, why don't you go ahead and continue with that? Well,
again, there's not much to say. They're both just really cute little songs. Hide and Seek is kind of interesting though, because it almost, like, there's a bunch of sections where it starts talking about somebody's, like, love, and it's, like, comparing the game of hide and seek to, like, hiding their love for somebody. So, like, I'm not sure how seeking my first love really fits into what's going on in that particular short. But I'm not sure the entire song played also during the Pikachu short, so it was just the first couple verses. And yeah, it kind of evokes just that feeling of playfulness. And Big Summer Daisakusen is kind of the same deal. It's just, everybody playing together and having, making some good summer memories.
Yeah, it definitely, I think, fits the nature of the shorts, which is to be a little more, have a little more levity and to be lighter fare than the main movie, which Pokemon movies aren't known for being the, most gritty things anyway, but definitely the shorts sort of function as the lighter end of the presentation. And we had talked about sort of the opening themes. For the 4th season, they brought back the original theme with different instrumentation, and they sort of did the same thing on the dub side. They gave us Born to be a Winner, which is, uses some elements there, especially in the movie version. And this is the first time in the English dub that we get to hear as a vocal performer. He had done some stuff before. David Rolfe, who would do the opening themes for seasons 4 through 8. What do you think about sort of that era and his body of work within Pokemon?
Okay, I had to look him up, but I have loved this guy without ever knowing who he was or what he did, because he sings the Pokemon opening themes with such a passion and a connection. He sings them like I, in my heart, would like to sing them. Like, so if he doesn't have the same love for Pokemon that I do, I would never know. So I just think he brings such a joy and an energy to the songs that he sings for Pokemon, that it almost feels like, this is a song Ash would sing. This is the feeling Ash has when this music comes on.
Yeah, and in this particular movie, they did, rearrange the TV theme. They didn't just extend it like they do with the 5th and 8th movies. They really did re-engineer the audio. What do you think of that in this one?
I really like it a lot. It's a fun arrangement, and I think it really adds to the overall sound of the song. And
like we said earlier, paralleling that on the Japanese side, they have an alternative version of Aim to be a Pokemon Master. How do you feel that worked out here?
To be honest, I have a lot of trouble keeping all the versions of Mazase Pokemon Master straight. So
this isn't the last.
Yeah, this will not end ever. But I don't know if I like it as much as I have enjoyed the first incarnation of the song, or even later ones. I think having Rika back on vocals does a lot for that, just because it is it is explicitly Ash singing in some places. So having other people do the vocals, I think, takes away a little bit for me. But I like hearing different arrangements of it, but I don't know if I feel the same joy of the new and the exciting and the different directions that I do for, Born to be a Winner, and the way the original theme sometimes gets remixed, and on the English side is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And the other question I kind of wanted to ask here, since both the Japanese and the dub side kind of did similar things here, obviously the franchise has gone on way past this, so maybe this is just hindsight. Do you feel at all like maybe this was a little too early to bring that back?
On the English side, no. Because I think, first of all, they did something different with it. So, it was a flavor of what came before, but it didn't feel like, rehashing the greatest hits or trying to, lure people back in or any, it didn't seem to have an agenda. It was just a creative expression that added more to it. On the Japanese side, that's a tougher one. I almost think they would have been better going with something different. But Mazase Pokemon Master is so beloved that maybe they wanted to bring it back just for fun. It felt like there was a lot less of a deliberate vision with that choice, which is why I don't care for it as much. I think maybe it was the wrong time to bring that a new version back.
There's also the fact that in Japan, of course, the anime launched, a year or so after the games did, whereas in America, the TV show in most areas launched a little bit before the game, so that changes the perception of sort of what is the Pokemon theme.
Yeah, true.
And that may be affecting the discussion. I can't say exactly how, but that's certainly quite a possibility.
Well, I was going to say, neither of us really have the cultural experience of living in Japan at that specific time. So I don't know how people would have taken it who lived in the country. I only know how we as Americans hearing it overseas, perceiving it, feel. And that makes it a little harder to judge as well.
I'll definitely give you that. I mean, it was used, the Aim to be a Pokemon Master was, given an 8-bit remix in Pokemon Pinball for the Game Boy Color. So it definitely has some notoriety as part of the franchise.
Oh yeah, we know what it is, but I mean, we don't have the same cultural response to that song that everybody who lived in Japan at the time would have, I think.
Yeah, it definitely has a different place than the American dub anime theme, I would say, is probably a good way to describe it, so that maybe that's affecting this judgment in some way.
Yeah, like the way we burst into song at conventions whenever the Pokemon theme in English plays, I feel like Mizase Pokemon Master has that level of reverence in Japan among its fans. So when I say, like, maybe it was too early to bring it back, like, for me, yeah. But for them, like, you know, for me, it's never too early to bring back the English Pokemon theme. So, you know, for their perspective on that, how they feel about that song, I think must be completely different than mine. And I was not living in Japan at the time when that single dropped, so I don't feel like I can really capture that mindset.
That may be a discussion for another day that we may want to have, because there's certainly a lot to talk about comparing sort of the relative stature within each one.
Yeah.
But one thing I said before we started recording is that I've come to realize, especially with this last discussion, I don't hate Pokemon Forever as a movie. I don't know that I would call it terrible, but as with a lot of folks, now there are some folks who really like this movie, and that's fine if you do, but definitely not one of my favorite Pokemon movies to watch like straight through. I think the last time I really did that was when the Blu-ray came out a couple of years ago. I did watch straight through it just to get an idea, and I have to say I kind of like the music associated with this movie a fair bit more than the movie itself. Do you ever kind of get that feeling as well?
I definitely do. I do love a lot about this movie, but you have to accept it has some problems. But its score definitely had a very specific image that it was going for. And so, yeah, I could sit back and just turn off the dialogue and listen to the music. If that were an option, I think that would be totally fine, to watch the entire movie and like just toggle on the dialogue during the scenes that are really my favorites.
It is a very, very odd dynamic, I would say, and fairly unique among Pokemon movies that way. We may talk about that with some of the other ones, but like I said, Pokemon Forever, I don't consider it a terrible movie. I've definitely seen maybe not much worse in terms of Pokemon. People bring up the Keldeo movie as one of the other very weak ones.
It had some problems too.
We may talk about that in a future episode, but I definitely enjoy the music from this. Maybe it's part of it is that especially the English side of the music, in terms of the vocal songs, seems to have more energy and movement to it than, say, the movie itself, which isn't super slow, but I would not call it one of the most action-packed Pokemon movies out there.
Right, yeah. And maybe that was why I had trouble getting on board with it at the beginning, was, you know, so much of the movie is slow and contemplative and kind of enjoying the little moments, and then suddenly we have a song that's like big and bouncy and let's move. It does feel like a bit of a tonal shift that, you know, we might not have been ready for.
Well, I'll say one thing. It is my second most favorite fourth movie in the series where a green thing travels through time. In any case, I think that's probably going to do it for our discussion here. All right. Thank you very much, Anne. Again, great having you on. I certainly look forward to Movie 5, which is going to be a little bit unusual because there wasn't on the English side a specific song written for it. It's all previous material, but I think we'll still have some things to talk about there.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you for having me on.
This has been Stephen Reich from the Pokepress Studios in Madison, Wisconsin, on the phone with Anne of Peekaboo Podcast discussing the music of the fourth Pokemon movie.